You're not your job. You're not how much money you have in the bank. You're not the car you drive. You're not the contents of your wallet. You are not your fucking khakis. You're the all-singing, all-dancing crap of the world. Nobody needs suicidalists. Happy Friday, and how the fuck are you? It is review time again, and have I got a live one for you this week. This week we're going to take a look at the latest from Danish director Nicolas Winding Refn, Only God Forgives, a movie that Rex Reed has called one of the worst movies ever made. Do I agree with him? Is Only God Forgives one of the worst movies ever made? You're going to have to wait to find out, because first we got the hotness. So this week I'd like to draw your attention to a few short films that I saw over the last couple of days. There are a lot of great short films hitting the internet right now. The first one I'd like to talk about is called One Last Dive. Now, I actually published this one to my Tumblr feed earlier this week, so you may have seen this. I can't actually say too much about it because it runs only about a minute long, and it hinges on a scare right at the end that is extremely effective. It is a very, very good horror movie to watch. Do make sure you check it out. The link is down in the description. Next up, I would like to talk about The Final Moments of Karl Brandt, which is a short film which is very stylish, very cyberpunk, and it features Pee Wee Herman, aka Paul Rubens, in a starring role. This is a movie that at its heart is a murder mystery set in the near future where a piece of technology allows a pair of homicide detectives to retrieve the final moments, the final memories of their murder victim in order to solve the crime. The whole thing is extremely slick. It's got a great production. You know, there are big budgeted Hollywood projects that wish they were this movie. And it's entirely inspired by Philip K. Dick, right down to the title. You know, there's just so many great short films happening right now. I mean, time was you had to wait for a film festival to come around in order to see this stuff. But hey, we're living in the future now. So the last short that I want to bring to your attention is called Truth in Journalism. It comes from director Joe Lynch and the producers of that Better Than We Deserved Punisher short, Dirty Laundry, the one with Thomas Jane, the one where he doesn't actually have the skull on his chest. This one is a bit of French New Wave meets that movie Man Bites Dog, where it's very cinema verite, shot in black and white. It's very grainy. Follows True Blood's Ryan Gosling around as he plays Eddie Brock, who you may know from the Amazing Spider-Man comics as the guy who received the alien suit after Spidey managed to shake it after Secret Wars. So he becomes Venom, and this is a Venom movie, and it is a very, very good Venom movie. It runs about 16 minutes long. It's very well worth your time. If they were to make an Amazing Spider-Man 3 with Venom, it's inevitable. They are gonna have to go with Ryan Gosling as Eddie Brock because, man, this is a good piece of short film, and the Venom suit lacks a lot of the identifying characteristics for copyright reasons, obviously, but it's a really, really great little effect when it happens. It's something definitely worth checking out. So let's not beat around the bush. Let's get to it. Only God Forgives. Only God Forgives takes us to Bangkok, capital of Thailand. You've probably seen it in The Hangover 2. Julian and his brother, his crazy-ass brother Billy, are a couple of American expats who run a Thai boxing camp, ring where dudes fight, Muay Thai. It also happens to be a front for a drug smuggling operation. Now, after a night of fights, good pull from the gambling, Billy decides to go out and hits up a couple of pimps looking to have sex with a 14-year-old girl. Eventually, he finds his way to a girl who suits his tastes, brutally rapes and murders her. Now, naturally, he is caught, the police are summoned, and the girl's father is summoned by police detective Chang, who's also known as the Angel of Vengeance. Chang commands this man to have his revenge and to kill Billy, which he does with his bare hands. Shortly thereafter, Julian finds this guy, the girl's father, in order to have his own revenge. But when he finds out why he killed his brother, he lets the man go. Julian's mother shows up in Thailand to handle the remains of her son, and while she's there, she commands Julian to have his revenge, to kill this man, who he refuses. She commands him to kill the cop, Detective Chang, who ordered the hit, and he still refuses. So she decides to take matters into her own hands, and this is where things get incredibly complicated. This brings her to blows with Detective Chang, the Angel of Vengeance, as well as the corrupt police department in Bangkok. I go really hard on directors who specialize in style over substance. I just prefer a director who can craft a compelling story that engages me to somebody who can set up and light a nice shot or compose a nice special effects shot. For all the Michael Bays of the world who I rail against, however, I tend to give Refn a pass because his style is the substance in this case. His grasp on the craft of making movies is so strong that you can just get lost in the scenery that he gives you. Music video directors have a tendency to get carried away cramming as many violent smash cuts into a picture as possible. The end result is something like cinematic junk food. It takes more from you than it gives you. Now, Refn's movies have a tendency to be very nutritional in an intellectual context. Everything is so stylized, but he still gives you plenty of time to savor the scene. It's a very satisfying experience to look at his movies. Even when he's getting carried away with the aesthetic, the scenery is so busy and colorful and interesting that it alone is telling you a story. Now, Only God Forgives is currently being murdered by the press. Reviewers hate this movie, and the premiere at Cannes was disastrous to say the least, as people booed it while it was in progress, and a lot of people walked out on it. But I think these people are missing a very vital piece of the puzzle here. And it might actually be a fatal error on Refn's part. See, something happens right at the end of this movie, no spoilers here. It causes everything in this movie, this weirdo, violent piece of art house, to suddenly snap into focus. He dedicates the movie to Alejandro Jodorowsky. Why? Well, Jodorowsky made a movie in the late 80s called Sana Sangre, and it is a movie that is absolutely rich in Freudian and Oedipal symbolism. Sana Sangre is about a foreigner living in an exotic country where he acts as the literal extension of his mother's hands. Now, in Only God Forgives, Julian acts as the metaphorical extension of his mother's hands. She demands violent action of him, and rather than do the dirty work herself, she manipulates other people into doing the work for her. It just so happens that he does it more. And there's a symbolic preoccupation with Julian's hands in this movie, as we're constantly being pulled into close-ups of them, as if he's staring at them, balling them into fists, as if that's all they're good for. He engages in a strange relationship with a prostitute who is mostly only ever viewed behind a beaded curtain. He's only really allowed to touch her through that curtain. He also has another scene, like early in the movie, where she ties his arms to a chair and he has to watch her masturbate. Now, I could talk about this movie and the symbolism contained in there for hours. I just don't have that kind of time right now. I wish I did, though, because there's so much to talk about here. But it's very obvious that Refn has been watching movies by Sam Peckinpah, by David Lynch, and very obviously Alejandro Jodorowsky. Refn is a master of his craft, and he is getting some outstanding work from his star of choice, Ryan Gosling. Now, Gosling, between this movie and Drive, is beginning to carve out a career for himself, staring off into the middle distance and brooding, playing these severely damaged characters in Refn's movies. And here he is no different. He is the violent punctuation in an otherwise quiet movie. And man, this movie is quiet. I swear, Schwarzenegger has more lines than the Terminator that Gosling has in Only God Forgives. The movie's drawing a bit of fire for being tedious because of this, and like I said before, it's so rich in symbolism. It gives you so much to think about if you're thinking about it. And it also has such a stunning production design that the movie's either, tedious or an absolute joy to look at, and there's not a whole lot of room between the 2 points. Bangkok is as much a character in this movie as Gosling's Julian. I am in love with Thai boxing. I actually practice Muay Thai, and I'm fascinated by the culture of fighting in Thailand. So I'm a bit biased here, but Bangkok looms over the action in this movie, and being that this is a noir of classic proportions, you just can't get away from it. Thailand is a very colorful country, and Refn makes great use of its natural beauty, even in its seediest locations. Only God Forgives, a movie you absolutely have to tune your expectations for. Nicolas Winding Refn is a filmmaker's filmmaker. He is a darling of the critics who have a natural love affair with the craft of making a movie. But his gestures can be impenetrable to the average viewer, so beware. Even though Only God Forgives is being sold as a revenge picture, and it is, it spends a lot more time meditating on some very Freudian, very Oedipal concepts of family. And it is interrupted occasionally by some very intense, very explosive bouts of graphic violence. So, have you seen Only God Forgives? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know down in the comments. And if there's anything else you want to see reviewed, also put it down there in the comments. Let me know and I will review it. Like always, like, comment, subscribe, and I'm going to put a link to my Patreon account down in the video description. If you feel like supporting Cinema Suicide, it would be greatly appreciated. Please take a minute to check it out, and I will see you next Friday.